So I will ask now, Senator, when you hear the theme of the discussion, basically, can multicultural societies work?
Mhm.
What's the first thing that comes to mind? Do you think that it's a possibility, or do you think that it's an impossibility, basically?
Yeah, so when we look at that question, can multicultural society work? We're looking at three things there: multicultural and society. And when we look at societies, that is a very big subset of every society. Human beings are a walking contradiction. We have individual identity, and yet we are social animals. And so there is a need to interact with people, and it always starts from family. And so you bond with your family because you are related by blood, not necessarily because you are the same. Even if you're a twin, your twin is different from you. What goes through your head is different, but usually find a common ground and you progress. And before you know it, about 70,000 years ago, when the human species was developing today as a modern man that we have it as a society, you start having families forming clans. And then that start forming bands, a few 10 or 100 of people. And then bands are related by geography, by, the sort of trade they do, the sort of work they do, the sort of god they worship, which is like a subset of their location. And then they started meeting together, they start forming tribes. And the question becomes, can two bands or two clans exist as a tribe? We have our own interests, you have your own interests. Do we fight? Then they have shared common, something there's a shared common interest, then they form tribes. Then later you start having two tribes, three tribes coming together, and there's also like some frictions, then they also form bigger society. You have ethnic groups, with individual clans, individual languages, but later start to blur together. And then we start having nationalist movements that, oh, we can actually bring different ethnic groups together. Look at Nigeria, for 250 ethnic groups, yet one nation, one shared identity, Nigerians. We have that all over the world, over 200 countries that we have different ethnic groups. Initially, there were conflicts, but then there's a shared identity. And so today we are looking at that, and we have different cultures that have emerged over the years, sometimes different ideologies, different religious identities, different work, in fact. And the question again is presenting to us, can they work together? And we've seen good examples. We've seen Hong Kong, we've seen Canada, where we have different people, different race, different cultures that are coexisting peacefully. And then they are also, moving the human species forward, because that is the need for us to come together. That is why we become basically dominant on this planet, and we are commanding everything that is happening, because we can share our knowledge together and we can build a stronger society. So this is a superset. This is a bigger question. Like, we are not talking about tribes anymore, we are talking about larger societies. And is it possible? Of course it is, but that's not without its initial frictions or conflict. Always remember, at every point that we've tried to band together, whether as a smaller groups or as a larger groups, there's always conflict, but we've always looked for a superset of shared interest. Okay, this is what we can all agree on, in spite of our individual differences, and we've always progressed from that. And so, because of that, I think that this is just the next frontier. So we're coming together, because when we talk about multicultural societies, now we are looking at globalism. That as a global species, we want to become a galactic someday. How can we come together? So the question is, what is the shared interest that we can't just agree on to get to that part? So yeah, it can work, I believe so strongly.
All right. I like how you started in the sense that you talked about different ethnic groups,
Yeah.
or rather, you say families coming together, then communities, then ethnic groups, then before we have nationalist movements,
Yeah.
all of that. So yeah, but when it now comes to multicultural societies, right, there's usually this juxtaposition between how exactly should we make these multicultural societies exist?
Yeah.
Should they exist as maybe different groups of people coming together to have one identity,
Mhm.
or different groups of people coming together to form a country with still maintaining their individual identities and
Yeah.
all of that, right? So there are some arguments for or against some of those movements. Well, which one of them will you lean towards?
Yeah, so when we look at identity, it means several things, right? We share the same identity, we are from the same ethnic group, but your surname is different from mine. We also have our individual identity. So I think that's the thing. People are always afraid that, okay, if we're going to live together, then we have to ignore all our identities. That is not how we live our world. There's always uniqueness in everybody, but there is a superset of a shared identity. So the reason why I'm in Nigerian is not because everybody is a Christian like I am, or everybody is from Badagry like I am. It's because we are in the same geographical location. When you draw the arbitrary border, we exist in the same place. All right, we are blacks. That's a superset thing. And when I see him, like, oh, this is my brother. We speak pidgin English. That's a superset of an identity.
Yeah.
I still have my own Yoruba. I still have my own ego. So something like that. When we look at multicultural society, they can still maintain their individual languages, individual religion, but maybe economic policies can then be the shared common interest in this case,
Right.
or a superset of okay, we want to go to space, like we have it, during the moon landing. That's a shared identity that we can all identify.
Venturing into like greater technological heights.
Yeah.
All right. So okay. Yeah, so you made a good point about how the identities. Maybe I would like to get back to you on that when it comes to immigration.
Okay.
Like people with different cultures immigrating into a homogeneous society sort of. Or we used to want them to retain their identity in that place, or should they adopt the culture and identity of wherever they are immigrating to? Well, when we talk about that suspect in discussion, but I want to come to like Emmanuel. I know Emmanuel is someone who has studied a lot of these multicultural dynamics, right? But I want to get your opening perspective, right? When you think about that topic itself, like can multicultural societies work? What is like your initial perspective or response?
All right, so I would like to give this answer. I was waiting to give it at the end to be like, what is the solution to multiculturalism? The first thing is tolerance and acceptance. And when we go back to what Josh mentioned, that clans, tribes, ethnic groups, countries, one of the things you would see in every of those particular groups of people is acceptance and tolerance. So do you accept the other group as a unique identity that is not subdued under yours? When you have this sense of superiority, like the iron superiority that bet the Nazi group, you start to see others as being lesser than you are. It doesn't promote multiculturalism. It promotes superior and inferior, and the inferior have to be knocked out, killed in this sense. So can a multicultural society work? Yes, it can, if we tolerate and accept each other. Now, Canada is a good example of a multicultural society that is working. One of the ways they did it is by codifying it into law. So it's a law in Canada. They have the Multicultural Act of 1971, Multicultural Policy of 1988, and they have 5 stipulations. One of them is that they are going to recognize each individual ethnic identity. 2 is that there's going to be equal treatment and recognition under the law. So like when they go to the court system, they are not differentiated as, oh, you are this tribe, you are that tribe, and this tribe gets more. There's favoritism.
Yeah.
Like when they go there, courts treat them like better than the others. Others are like, they would encourage equal participation of all the groups in the economy. And another is that like the institutions would recognize the differences and promote them and encourage that each one of them are active parts of it. Meaning that every Canadian institution would accept whether they are Hindu, whether they are Christians, whether they are Muslims, for any of them to participate there. So they can become police officers, for example. They can become ministers, for example, and no one is subdued. So that is an example of a multicultural society.
Very interesting take. Very interesting take. I agree with you in the sense that Canada is like a functioning multicultural society.
Yes.
So, but then I also want to like get into more insight into what you're saying in the sense that talked about like tolerance and acceptance of
Yes.
Diverse cultures and perspectives, right? But what happens in a situation where there is a culture or let's say a perspective, right, that is kind of antagonistic to the prevailing culture in a state already, right? So, like for example, where you have like hardline Islamic fundamentalists probably trying to institute like a Sharia law in a country like Canada that is like a free liberal society.
Yes.
In that constitution, how exactly can you like merge the concept of tolerance or acceptance? Don't you think that maybe there are just some
They're on opposite
cultures,
sides.
that may just not be able to tolerate each other or accept each other because they are just antagonistic to each other?
Now that's a very good question, yeah. And one answer I would give is that Canada doesn't seem to have that problem currently.
Yeah, no, obviously I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying like
if it were to happen.
it's because we talked about like for some of the things that are encoded into the
law. Yes.
Right. I agree with that. But the people who were making those laws in those times, they may not even necessarily have factored in like a sort of polarized or antagonistic viewpoints coming into the country,
Country, yeah,
becoming a significant part of like the culture.
yeah,
I'm not saying like Islamism. I'm just saying like, for example, right,
yeah.
right. So, but then in that kind of situation, the law, the people who made the law did not necessarily envisage any form of like antagonism in cultural identities, because it was majorly like French speaking, English
English speaking,
speaking,
then indigenous
indigenous
groups.
groups at that time, right? But now, when
No, even at the time they made the laws, we already had large groups of other ethnicities in Canada. Because 1988 is not
yeah,
that
but they were
long
much
ago.
more
Even till now, there are still more French speaking, more English speaking people from like of European descent
yeah.
than other immigrants. Oh, it's still the same till now, yeah. I understand your point, and
Yeah.
I feel like lots of it stems from Europe. Europe is the one that has this issue. And one of the reasons that I think for it is because people were brought into European societies and there was not a pathway for them to, adopt the cultures of the new countries that they came into.